So I just want to welcome you all to, I think this would be good to do this view for now. So welcome to the online Peace Wave Summit. We are really excited to be with this very prestigious, amazing man that is globally making quite a difference. And he's been very involved in some leading businesses of the planet that are also making great change. We're really grateful to have him as a friend and an ally of the work that we're doing in the world, and thrilled to dive into him with these questions that all kind of come under the umbrella of how do we mobilize and support social innovators and youth of the world to achieve the global goals and create peace on earth by 2030. So welcome, Akhtar.
Akhtar
Badshah.
Yeah. Yes.
We'd like to start off with asking you a question. Do you think it's possible to create peace on earth by 2030?
So I want to answer that question a little differently.
Great.
I think there will always be areas of the world in peace, and there will always be some areas of the world that will have some level of conflict. And part of that is that that's just who we are as humans. So I think the goal is more about creating people, more and more people who are compassionate, who are able to then see when there is disagreement, it does not devolve into a strife. It does not necessarily mean that there is an agreement, but there is a understanding that you can still have differences, right? So this notion of having people that are compassionate, who can appreciate diversity, not just in the way people look and feel, but diversity of thoughts and diversity of action, which allows people to then coexist and live. So yes, there will be disagreements, there will be some levels of, tensions, but I think what we need to achieve is getting people to understand how to be compassionate and to move people from where we are right now, which is more about people being passionate about something, which is far more individualized in your approach, to being compassionate about something where you're much more collective in your approach. And I think that's the way I kind of see what we should be aiming for.
God, Akhtar, that is so on mark with our whole vision of synergizing together and being able to create unprecedented unified action through cooperation. And that compassion is your path there is so beautiful and inspiring, because we agree it's not about that there won't be conflicts, but maybe we can stop killing each other over those conflicts and we can find a more compassionate way to coexist.
Mm-hmm. So is that a yes? You do believe it's possible? Is that a yes? Or
yeah, no. So what I'm saying is that the goal, in my mind, I think that one needs to kind of look at it and say, can we create a compassionate world?
Mm-hmm.
And can we increase compassion? Then that leads to stability.
Mm-hmm.
And then stability leads to peace in some form or the other.
Yeah. All right. So what do you think most stands in the way?
I think what stands in the way is that all of us, well, not all, but most of us have lost this innate desire for what is the common good. That we don't work for a common good.
Mm-hmm.
We work for the individual well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And that individual well-being then becomes, I win, you lose. Right? That if I'm successful only because you were not successful. Right? So competition, greed, hubris, all of this stands in the way, right? Individualism in some way stands in the way. But yet we are actually in a culture that promotes individualism. Now, I'm actually not talking that we should go into a collective society. This is not about collectivism.
Yeah.
But it is about recognizing what is the common good and working within the common good. That we are all working towards the common good.
Yeah.
And I think we need more leadership that starts talking more about what is the common good versus anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder, which kind of leads real naturally into the next question. What do you see are, 3 to 5, maybe more, most critical kind of action steps that you could see kind of getting and maybe out of the individual sort of way and veering more into a perspective on what is, how can I contribute to the common good? Do you see particular ways for us to move towards that compassion?
I think we do take collective action, right? So when you look at all of these movements that are coming about, including the fact that you have the compassion games, it is one way in which you are bringing a lot of people together around a common good.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter is a movement around common good.
Yeah.
What the Me Too movement is around common good.
Right.
What the Parkland students are doing is around a common good, right? So movements are there. I think the challenge is the episodic nature of these movements. So how do you actually sustain a movement? Now, sustaining a movement actually only happens because there is sacrifice. And sacrifice only happens when there is somebody who's actually going to pay the price, which is now antithesis to what you're talking about, which is peace. Right? So if you think about racial equality, everybody that was participating in that in the 60s, many of them sacrificed and they paid a price. Many of them with their lives.
Yeah.
Others got jailed. Others had to give up certain things. But without that sacrifice, there is no movement to sustain. And so you kind of got this tension between what we are talking about, peace, and then movements which to a large extent only survive because there is a sacrifice. So if you talk about the Dalai Lama, there is a massive amount of sacrifice that has been paid by that group of people because they have been wanting to pursue a particular way of life.
Well, when you say, Akhtar, when you say sacrifice, what comes to mind is discipline. Is that?
No, I mean, it is actually sacrifice. I mean, the Dalai Lama has sacrificed his homeland.
Yeah.
Give up.
He has lived in exile all his life.
Right.
That is a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Now, certain good has come out of it.
Right.
To a lot of people around the world, but that community has paid a price for it.
Right.
Yeah, a level of suffering, like a level.
So it is suffering, right? Yeah. So, but it is a sacrifice, right? It is a. So the question becomes, that we have to understand that movements don't get sustained without sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And who's going to pay the price?
Mm. Yeah.
All right. So for there to be a peace movement,
Mm-hmm.
what would
Yes.
the sacrifice?
Yes. So what is going to be the sacrifice for the peace movement to actually get sustained?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all those arms dealers are going to have to be willing to realize that there isn't a great need for their products and services anymore, huh?
No, but the point I'm trying to get at is that in between, so the Parkland students actually paid a price.
Yeah.
There was a sacrifice. They got shot at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Students died.
Mm-hmm.
These students have suffered a trauma that they will never be able to get rid of for the rest of their lives. Right? So it's not the what is the end result of peace to a particular segment that will pay a price. But those of us that are actually going to drive this movement, what price are we willing to pay?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Otherwise, it just becomes a nice thing to do and an episodic gathering
Yeah.
versus a sustained movement.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point I'm trying to kind of make as a distinction between what can be achieved and not be achieved.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. No, that's brilliant, Akhtar, because that's in line with the idea of social change meaning behavior change. That's we
Yes.
have to change. That
Yeah.
the sacrifices you're talking about are
It's like
balancing
creating new habits.
individualism with communitarianism. It's balancing
Right.
self-interest and shared interest. It's
Mhm.
having that common good in mind. It doesn't mean that it's a collective for everything. No, but there are boundaries, but you understand you can create a more balanced world
Mm-hmm.
that harmonizes those inequities.
Right. I mean, our homelessness conversation right now is kind of where all of us are struggling to find what is the common good.
Right, right. That's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's like a good example. So being like, you know, we're all in the Northwest and that is a challenge. And I wonder for you, if you were to take that as an example and move through beyond the sacrifice and the building something that actually would make the difference of not having homelessness in Seattle, let's just say, what do you see would be the necessary steps for that to actually happen for an example, a place that I know is dear for the three of us? What do you think needs to happen? Like, what would be the steps there? Knowing that.
I mean, there is a utopian way to think about it, right? That if for us to reduce homelessness,
Yeah.
Obviously people will have to pay more resources to build the shelters that are required. Somewhere you would have to actually think about it and say, property prices have to come down into a far more affordable range to what people are earning. And therefore, there is a sacrifice to that group of people who are suddenly going to say that I am going to be less wealthy. You have to then think about it from the perspective of saying that what is the appropriate level of jobs for this city?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very complex issue, right? So excessive growth also leads to a disbalance. But then those that are actually thriving off the growth also have to be willing to sacrifice to say there is going to be something else that we need to do to ensure that everybody is able to partake.
Yeah, yeah.
But in an individualized society, that option has gone away. Right? Many people feel that just if these guys could lift themselves up with their boots, they would be okay because there are jobs available and why they're not going and working in a job.
Yeah.
Right? So you so it becomes much more complicated and say, okay, unemployment rate is, 4% or 3.8% means anybody who's unemployed means that they don't want to work.
Right.
But on one side, you kind of look at work as being those earning six-figure salaries versus the reality of the world is that most of you are not earning six-figure salaries working.
Right.
This is very evident now in Silicon Valley, where we're working with a compassionate Silicon Valley. And they have 65,000 people who identify themselves as millionaires and billionaires. And there's 700 people, 7,500 people that they cannot get houses for. And it's just an interesting, gut-wrenching challenge that the Valley is facing.
Right.
Campaign, no one lives outside, is what's being started up there. And the CEO of Cisco put $50 million towards this. They're saying, no,
right.
Morally, it's just not right. We need to change.
So there had to be some sacrifices,
Leadership,
some choices
exactly
that were
what
made.
saying.
And Leslie Meehan is actually, we just spoke with her. She'll be in this summit as well, who's taking on the compassionate Silicon Valley as a part of as an example of the compassionate city movement that is, taking on initiatives like this.
Right.
And making some pretty significant change.
But Akhtar, for you personally, you have this wisdom. You've seen so many people who are looking to make change in the world. And, learning about this idea of social change 2.0, behavior change, what really leads to lasting impacts. What is it that you most want to contribute to creating a more peaceful world?
So I am not taking on any bold, audacious goals. I mean, my one level of wisdom is so I don't know. I feel that we are all seduced by bold, audacious goals because that's the way we all think. And I think that's the wrong way to think. That actually is what has led to all of these problems. We will eradicate this. We will eliminate that. We are not magicians. We can't wave wands. There will be no peace on earth. That much I know. Because it's just not humanly possible. But I think you can create as many people as possible that are compassionate. And if thousands of people actually work on creating 10 people who are compassionate, then you start getting millions of people who are compassionate, which essentially then means that you are creating a viral movement rather than a top-down approach. Right? So my goal is to say, okay, I'm just going to go work at the university and train kids in the best way I can and let them go and do things which they will take and then they will train other stuff. And the world will continue to become better and better. But it's not a magic wand, right? So I kind of go into my spiritual journey that you have at the back is I'm not in favor of creating whales. I'm more in the sphere of creating salmons. Spawn salmons, more resilient, healthy, swim upstream, survive for a very long time, and they are plentiful. Now, I understand the power and aura of a whale.
A whale.
Waves or wave?
No, whale. Whale as the big fish.
Oh, whale.
Whale.
Oh, okay. Whale to salmon. Got it. Okay.
This is so really important to us because we're trying to make waves here and big waves of change. So I want to make sure we got it right. Okay,
yeah, we want to include the salmon and the whales. So it's
right. So the question is, what has more power at the end of the day? A tsunami or small currents? which are continuous.
Mm-hmm.
If you wait for a tsunami to happen, it might be once every 100 years. But if you can tap the power of the waves, it is happening all the time.
Yes.
So the question is, where is your focus?
Mm-hmm.
My focus is on the small waves.
Right, right.
Because the ripples can create more power.
And it's more sustainable. That's like when you say that is, yeah.
It's happening all the time.
Right.
So how do you harness a ripple versus how do you harness a tsunami?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but that's completely antithesis to what we are all taught. Nobody gives you any brownie points for coming and saying, I have no great vision. You will fail in your class.
Right.
So we all create visions. And then we all fail to execute on it because it is just not possible. But we all feel great because we tried and we gave it our best. Why go there? Well, at the end of the day, all you've done is created a ripple. So then you might as well start with the ripple and say, can I actually do 10 ripples rather than one ripple? It's just a different way of viewing the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I have in my old age decided I do not want to create waves. I am very happy with ripples. So it's a different way of thinking, right? So now when you kind of look at it and say, okay, how do we create these ripples which allows us to actually move the ball forward towards peak? What does that look like? Is it one big movement we want to create? Or we want to create these, or we want to spawn millions of movements that are individualized, that are separate, which are all working in some form or the other, and there are all of these connections in your little fabulous whatever graph that you do.
The Kumu maps, the synergy.
Yes. No, so you kind of look at it and say that, are you a hub and spoke, where you're basically saying, I'm the hub and everything emanates out of that? Or are you creating a viral network, which is a mesh network, right? So in some ways, that's what I'm talking about, right? Are we creating a mesh network, which is, there is no central force.
That's right, that's right. No, we're a node.
Definitely the second one.
Not a hub.
Yeah.
We want to be nodes, and it's humility over brand. It's mission over organization.
Absolutely decentralized.
It's a and that's the science of what they call contagion, is weak ties. That it isn't.
So I think that's how. I mean, I'm not being critical. I mean, you just asked the question in terms of what I would like to see.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm saying that's where I can contribute more than on the other side.
Now, you know how it's so beautiful, though, Akhtar, is you see, you make those ripples. I can make a wave about the ripples you're making.
Right.
Satisfy that, right? So that everybody realizes the power of making ripples and not necessarily needing a vision and being everything that you're saying, because we need all of it. Well, it isn't about having the right answer. It's not about being the movement. It's not about being the one. It really is about empowerment. For each of us, an agency and what we can bring forth. And if that's a ripple, that's what we need from you. And that's what we're going to make a wave about.
Well, and also the way that we've been talking about this is let's make a wave out of so many streams make a wave. And when in talking about the ripple, I think ripple and stream is very much on some level the same thing, that there are many streams and they're valuable and not just only when they're waves, but that like support of those ripples, you know, so it can reach the ripple could go, so if we're thinking about the analogy of the water and a rock drops in, it can ripple out maybe to a certain point. But the goal, of course, would be to extend that ripple as far as
because then there is somebody else who's actually then throwing another small rock.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? And there's another person throwing another small rock.
Right.
Versus one giant boulder being thrown into the lake.
Right.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
By the way.
I mean, that's the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you create that? And I think that's what is so interesting with what you've done with the compassion game.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it is this multiplicity of efforts that is actually leading to all sorts of interesting things in our communities around the world.
Yeah.
No, it is. It's a sight to behold, and we're looking to see what's our growing edge together. As we're learning together, how do we strengthen each other? And a lot of that, and that's part of our next question, because there's certain groups you're working with. You've been teaching at the university as well as Global Washington. Because we're also asking, so what do you want most for the organizations you're involved with to contribute to creating these ripples to create a more peaceful world?
So I think that these organizations are already doing that, right? Mm-hmm. In their own way, everybody is doing something good.
Yeah.
Right? So by Global Washington getting more and more people to recognize that we have to be able to support the poor around the world, you're actually getting people to become more compassionate.
Right.
Right? They're willing to look outside their house to their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it is to the next community and to the next nation. And so in some ways, you are getting people to look beyond where they are.
Yeah.
Universities are doing the same thing by teaching students in a way which is, particularly the courses that we are working on, are creating students who are better understanding what empathy is, what leading from behind is, what creating, how do you create change? By tasting the ground that you're willing to walk on.
I love that when you say that, Akhtar. Yeah. I wonder if you, Akhtar, the students that you work with and the subject matter that you're working with them, is there a particular example or story that stands out to you about, a particular student that really, that you felt really was impacted by your program? Is there a particular example, especially for the focus around youth, social innovators and youth of the world, mobilizing them? What do you have a particular?
So I mean, I'm not sure that, I can take credit for what, but let me flip that and talk about, what some of my students are doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got this young man who's going to go to Mozambique and work there for one of the nonprofit organizations in some of the remote locations, effectively using technology for change. Mm-hmm. I have another student who is Syrian, but Canadian, but born in Syria, and she works in supporting the Syrian refugees around the world and creating economic opportunities for her. Right? I mean, I have other students who have come from different communities where they want to go and invest back into, and whether it's the Native American community or the African American community. So it's what these students are continuing to do. That to me is what is creating the next ripple and the next ripple and the next ripple. Yeah. One of my colleagues, a student who took my certification course, the Accelerating Social Transformation, I mean, she's a filmmaker and she does documentary films, and she had just made she'd just come last year from Burning Man to join our course. And she got, and that was also the height of our whole cycle around fake news.
Yeah.
And she got very focused on it. And she went from AST and created all of these partnerships with KCS TV and other organizations, and is now coming up with a PSA, a public service announcement around fake news, which the media outlets are going to roll out in August to get ready for the elections in November.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
Right? So, so just this one individual who's able to kind of take. Now, did it have to do anything with me? Probably not. But, you know, I mean, I think the more important thing was that these were things that she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And just by being in that course, it gave her the courage to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than say, oh, it's just a fancy of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right, right.
Right? But she did it. Nobody else. So that's to me, is the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Is what is it that you're willing to ignite that somebody else can take and run with?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Now, will this eliminate fake news? Probably not. But will it be another ripple to get more people educated about it and to rethink what we are listening and hearing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And we need that.
We do.
We need that in this world. You know?
All right, so the last question. Are there any other key insights that you'd like to share on how we can all work together?
I mean, you, John, started off by talking about some of the youths that you have organized or that are coming to the fore. So in some ways, I mean, I think that that's where one needs to give them the power to do this. I mean, I agree. The problem is us. But the problem is that they will also become us.
Right, right.
Youth
Exactly.
is not static.
Right. They do grow up. Yeah.
It's not, people age.
Yes.
And aging means they change.
Yeah.
And values change.
Hmm.
Commitments change. The ability to sacrifice changes because responsibilities shift.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what shifts people in their ability to persevere around certain things. And how do you do that is, you know, where I think we should be very creative about. What's the engagement model to continue to ensure that these ripple effects are there?
Well, that's why we're doing the summit. We're asking that question about how we mobilize the youth and social innovators.
And about sustainability of this work, that it may not be just a wrinkle in time. May it be the kind of impact that keeps being a practice of this behavior of sharing and compassion, and you know, it's all in a process of becoming more natural for us to be constantly in a place of that is not about ourselves, and that it is about, you know, the common good, or to be caring for others. You know, that's really what this really is about.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the games, it's fostering creativity to develop empathy into action.
Yeah.
And that empathy is what I think will help move us from that selfishness, the self-interest, to start to realize that there is enough. There is a point in which we can have enough. In fact, a friend of ours suggested that we use medical protocols to be able to diagnose people with greed. That we'd be able to say, no, it's okay. We know what that is. And that there actually be a way for people to come to self-awareness, out of balancedness that's causing this. Because just a few people, as you know, control so much of the wealth. I think 62 people control more than wealth of 3.5 billion people.
Yeah.
And that's the condition. It's
but again, I mean, I think we need to stop saying that, because that is not real wealth anyways.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, we keep talking about these things, which in my mind actually creates more dissonance than anything else.
Hmm.
These 62 people's wealth is all tied up into companies. It is just on paper. There is no reality to it.
Hmm.
And which is why none of these guys care about it to that extent.
Hmm.
Right? So you want to be careful about what we keep unnecessarily saying.
Mm-hmm.
The minute, now, which is not to say that these people are not wealthy and they should be using their resources wisely, but in some ways it is kind of meaningless because our capitalist system is rewarding people who start things. And when you start things, the reward is that you actually are the majority shareholder. But that's on paper. Because the minute you start selling stuff, your stocks are going to go down and you're going to drag everybody down in that process. So yes, so there is that paper wealth. But in some ways, I think that's not where should be focusing on. I think where the focus should be is that inequities are increasing. Inequities are increasing because people have lost the sense of what do we mean by being part of the common good. When earlier companies actually got created, even these multi-millionaire, billionaire CEOs looked at it and said that my employees need to have better housing. My employees need to have better healthcare. My employees need to have education. We should make transportation for them easier because they would be healthy and more productive and they are part of my community.
Hmm.
We had company towns. People kind of lived with each other, knew each other. One person fell sick, it meant the other person took care of them.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost that because we've made it individualized.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bigger challenge than this wealth.
Yeah.
It's our thinking has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been swept along.
Right? And it's happened since the 70s. And which is why we kind of have this fairy tale image of the middle class, of the successful middle class, of families, husband, wife, white picket fence, two kids, the elder boy, the younger girl. None of us had that ever. It was a fiction of our imagination, and we kind of stick to it. The world has always been more complex, but what people did at that time and what people kind of think about it is that there was a common good. We knew people, we worked with them, we knew our neighbors, we talked to them. There was a common bond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is going away.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, all these disparities then become much more acute.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I mean, as you're talking about these companies, is there any particular like organizations or people that really inspire you when you think of like what and where you'd like to see things going, or is there anyone that kind of like inspires you or lifts you of what you wish to see? Is there any companies that you're really inspired to see like them? That's the way to do it.
Mm-mm.
No? No?
No, I mean, I think, see, again, people ask me this all the time, which is your favorite city?
Mm.
What's your favorite food?
Yeah, yeah.
And I keep telling people, I have no favorite food. I love all food. I love all cities.
Yeah.
I'll go visit everything.
Mm-hmm.
There are hundreds of examples of people doing good things all over the world. There isn't one.
Right.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because with every good, there is something also bad there.
Mm.
That's just the way the world is.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than putting people up in pedestals and everybody knocks them down, let's just keep moving things along.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's yeah, I mean, Seattle's got some wonderful things. Companies are doing great things. People are doing terrific things.
Yeah.
I mean, there are millions of youth organizations all over the world that are doing some amazing stuff.
Yes.
There isn't just one individual.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's the way I kind of think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Includes.
Right. And there's more than we can know.
Correct. And there is more than we can know.
Yeah.
Which is exciting.
And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, right.
Yeah.
This is not about wrestling the issue down out of force and control. It's really about asking questions and, entering into the conversation to discover new ways of relating and new ways of amplifying with what is happening in the world. And we're really grateful to you, Akhtar, for your time here.
Yeah, thank you. And you have so many diverse experiences, and as the global Washington
and catalytic innovators, right? I mean, I want to be able to put a call out to how do people find out more about your work if they want to get connected to you?
People can just search for me. Type in my name. There is very few people with my name in the world.
Okay.
Your humility is a problem with us, Akhtar. You're getting in the way of us trying to promote you and praise you, bring love to you. What are we going to do?
Yeah, we want to bring, I know that the ripples and waves, we'd like to send a wave of peace to you and love. Appreciate it.
You guys are doing amazing work.
Well, we're at it. We're doing the best we can. We're surviving to cross over or crossing over to survive. I don't know. But we're certainly not going to give up. We're going to give everything we've got because something just is calling us together, and we're really grateful for everything that you're bringing to the world and to us personally and to this seminar, to this summit. All right.
All right, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Akhtar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.